In the horror film genre from the 1920s to the 1960s, there was a lot of son of horror movies. Son of Dracula, son of Frankenstein, or within the plot or concept. But this movie has kind of been forgotten. One of the nicest horror posters of the genre, and the underrated Louis Hayward played the title role. It's called The Son of Dr. Jekyll. Now, this is a 51 American horror film directed by Seymour Friedman and starring Louis Hayward, Joey Lawrence, and Alexander Knox. The film is a continuation of Robert Louis Stevenson's original classic 1886 novella, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, Jack Polfexvin, I hardly can say that, it's a hard word, scriptwriter of this film, wrote and produced a sequel in the same vein, Dr. Jekyll, starring the great Gloria Talbot. Now, in this movie, the film begins with a prologue set in 1860, where Mr. Hyde is chased down the streets of London after murdering his wife at their Soho flat. He escapes to the house of Dr. Jekyll, where he prepares the potion that will transform him back to a respected doctor. Unfortunately, the mob has already set the house ablaze. The flames drive Hyde to the top floor and attempt to leap to the ground. He meets his demise when he falls from that height. As he dies, he changes back into Dr. Jekyll. Now, John Utterson and Dr. Lanyon, original characters from Stevenson's novel, mourn their unfortunate friend Dr. Jekyll until Inspector Stoddard brings it to the Soho flat, where Jekyll Hyde has left an orphan behind. Utterson agrees to adopt a young Jekyll, since he and his wife have not succeeded in having children. 30 years later, Edward Jekyll, now fiancé to Utterson's niece Lynn and a student of Royal Academy of Sciences, is expelled from the academy because of his peculiar and unorthodox experiments, like father, like son. Edward is unaware that he's actually Henry Jekyll's son, and when he inherits the Jekyll's mansion, Dr. Lanyon tells him his father's tragic story. Now, Edward and Lynn move to the old Jekyll mansion for preparations of their marriage, and soon Edward feels unwelcome by his neighbors. Discovering his father's lab, Edward convinces himself to work on his father's experiments in order to clear the family name. He hires Michaels, Dr. Jekyll's old assistant, and begins researching. Unfortunately, after Edward first tests the formula himself, a Hyde-like man appears in the house and murders a number of people. Edward is charged for the murders, and, thought insane, is transferred to Dr. Lanyon's sanitarium, where the murders continue. Edward begins wondering if it is he who transforms into a murderer, or someone else is trying to drive him to insanity. It is shown clearly that Lanyon changed chemicals in his father's notebook to frame Edward and keep control of the estates. Now, this was a quick 78 minutes through Columbia Pictures, and let me tell you, it was a big B movie back in the day. With some key movies done by Columbia back in the day of the same genre, and the way the poster was done is almost like a late 1940s film noir. Like I said, one of the strongest posters for a non-A-level movie of that era. Quite interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our latest on our horror-filled look at some of the key Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde productions, or of that genre of the past 50 years. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, last I checked, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has not been done much in recent memory, so don't be surprised if you turn on Netflix or watch TV. There could be other similar productions down the road, because the 1860 to 1912 Gothic, including Jack the Ripper, always comes back in one form or another.